Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into something a little itchy. You're in a candlelit chamber in the winter of 1698, and the man standing in front of you, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a coat embroidered with firebirds and imperial gilt, is holding a pair of very sharp scissors. Behind him, guards, advisors, and one terrified noble whose beard is the size of a small dog. You hear the sound of the blades snipping through whiskers, followed by a soft gasp. The beard falls to the floor. Nobody speaks. You, unfortunately, are next in line. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments. Where are you listening from tonight, and what time is it there? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are living in Russia under Tsar Peter the Fjern, but don't let the title fool you. This is no ordinary ruler. This man is on a personal mission to change his entire country from the boots up. From the crown down, and yes, from the chin inward. Let's be honest, Russia at the turn of the 18th century is huge, icy, and absolutely bristling with tradition. Everything is a little behind by Western European standards, at least. Nobles still dress like it's the 1500s. The alphabet hasn't changed in centuries. And the beard? Oh, the beard. It's not just facial hair. It's a statement. It's religion, masculinity, wisdom, pride, age, and identity all tangled into one glorious tangle of hair. Now, Peter the Great is not a small man. He's 6'7", a towering figure even by modern standards, and he's tired. Tired of watching the rest of Europe stride ahead with telescopes, cannons, neat little opera houses, and gentlemen sipping coffee clean-shaven while Russia lumbers along like a hairy bear in boots made of bark. So Peter does something that most monarchs only dream of. He leaves. That's right. He disguises himself as a low-ranking officer, an incognito czar like a royal tourist with a fake mustache, and goes on a grand tour of Western Europe. This journey becomes known as the Grand Embassy. He travels to the Netherlands, England, and Austria, but not for sightseeing. You follow him to a shipyard in Holland where he rolls up his sleeves and learns to build frigates like a common laborer. He examines pulleys. He studies sails. He gets splinters. And all the while, he's watching people custom cities. What makes them efficient? Clean, powerful. And what they don't have? Beards. Peter is fascinated, maybe obsessed with how streamlined everything seems. Nobody's stumbling over ceremonial robes. Men wear tailored jackets. Their faces are visible expressions readable. Their manners clipped and orderly. Compared to the broad-bearded, boot-stomping boyars back home, it's like another planet. He returns to Russia not just with knowledge, but with a plan. One that will tug sometimes violently at the roots of Russian identity. It begins as all shocking reforms do with a party. You're invited well-summoned to a grand reception at Peter's court. There are musicians, candles, roasted boar. Everyone's just settling into their wine when Peter stands up drunk on vision, and possibly actual wine and gestures to a row of attendants carrying shears. The room stiffens. Someone coughs. Someone, Peter says casually, let us be done with the past, and starts cutting off beards. Right then and there, guests are held down while their beards are shorn off tufts, drifting like autumn leaves. Some nobles try to flee. One faints, another holds up a crucifix. It doesn't matter. Beards are falling faster than snow in a Moscow blizzard. You manage to dodge the shears this time, but you can feel the shift in the air. This isn't a joke. This is the beginning of something. By the next morning, it's law. Peter has decreed that all men, excluding peasants, clergy, and certain Cossacks, must shave their beards. And if they don't, they'll pay a beard tax. You queue up outside the tax office, staring down at the fine print on a decree nailed to the gate. The tax rate varies based on class. Nobles pay more. Merchants pay slightly less. If you're a tradesman or craftsman, still expensive. Refuse to pay the shears return. You turn to the man beside you who's cradling his beard like a kitten. It's sacred, he whispers. It's who I am. You nod. A priest passes by, beard flowing like a holy river. Clergy are technically exempt, but even they look uneasy. The beard, after all, is not just fashion. In Orthodox Christianity, it's a symbol of piety. Icons of saints are bearded. Christ himself is never clean-shaven. For many, to cut the beard is to cut a thread between man and heaven. Historians still argue whether Peter truly hated beards, or if he simply saw them as the face of resistance. A symbol of old thinking, old Russia, and Peter didn't do old. The resistance builds slowly. Some men pay the tax. Others flee to remote villages growing their beards in secret like wildflowers in forbidden gardens. Stories spread of men burying their beards after shaving like mourning the death of a relative. Still, Peter doubles down. He has beard tokens, minted small copper coins, stamped with a picture of facial hair, and the words, "The beard tax has been taken." You tuck yours into your belt pouch like a fragile treasure. Without it, you're vulnerable to surprise inspections. Rumors say Peter himself once stopped a man in the street, yanked his beard, and demanded proof of payment. No receipt, no beard. You look into the polished side of a kettle that night and stare at your reflection. Smooth-cheeked, pale, a stranger, a new man for a new Russia. You can't help but wonder, will it be worth it? You wake up with a cold draft whispering across your cheeks, bare sensitive, and somehow more exposed than any other part of your body. You touch your face instinctively as if hoping the beard might have grown back overnight like a loyal pet returning home. But no. Still gone. Still smooth. Still etched wrong. In 17th century Russia, a man without a beard is like a church without a dome. Functional, maybe, but somehow incomplete. You shuffle out into the morning frost, joining a procession of men making their way toward the cathedral for morning service. It's quiet except for the snow crunching under boots and the occasional sniff of someone holding back a cough or maybe a tear. As you near the church steps, you feel the eyes. Bearded eyes. Judging eyes. The priest at the entrance gives you a once-over and frowns. "Are you here to pray?" he asks flatly, "or to parade your sin?" You try to explain. The Tsar's orders, the tax, the shears. But he just steps aside, muttering something about Judas being clean-shaven too. Inside, the service continues as always, icons glowing in candlelight incense thicken the air, but you can't focus. Your chin tingles, your soul itches. Because in Orthodox Russia, the beard is sacred. It's not vanity, it's theology. The Bible says man was created in the image of God. God has a beard in every painting. Saints' beards, patriarchs' beards. The beardless face, according to centuries of belief, was feminine Roman heretical. The razor was an instrument of the devil. And here you are, freshly shaved, practically humming with apostasy. You step outside after the liturgy, joining the growing cluster of muttering, scowling men. Someone spits near your boots. You look like a Polish merchant, one sneers. You want to argue, but yeah, you kind of do. You're not alone, though. All over Russia, men are wrestling with the same existential crisis. The beard isn't just about religion, it's about identity. Peter, of course, doesn't see it that way. From his perspective, the beard is old-fashioned. It screams medieval. And he's trying to shove Russia into the Enlightenment by any means necessary. So what if the church grumbles? So what if old men weep into their pillows at night? Progress requires razors. Historians still argue whether Peter's reform was purely aesthetic or something deeper. Did he want to control his nobles' minds by controlling their faces? Was the beard just a symbolic battlefield, one skirmish in a larger war against tradition? Whatever his motives, the resistance is growing. Some men fake shave trimming just enough to appear compliant, while keeping a subtle shadow along the jawline. Others wear false chins, clever disguises made of dyed goat hair or woven horse bristle, tied on with string and worn beneath hoods. One merchant in Nizhny Novgorod got caught wearing a mustache made of squirrel fur. It slipped during a sneeze. He was fined and mocked for weeks. You pass a notice board nailed to a pine tree, a public decree outlining beard tax enforcement zones. Apparently, cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg are under strict surveillance, while smaller towns still turn a blind eye unless a government agent comes sniffing around. You think of fleeing, heading east maybe, growing your beard in peace among the Cossacks or mountain villagers. But you've heard that some of them, they shave voluntarily, out of fashion or spite, or because they believe Peter might be right. It's confusing. You visit a local tavern that night, hoping for warmth and distraction. But even there, the air is thick with tension. Bearded men keep to one side, shaven men to the other. A group of soldiers enters clean-chinned, cocky, and the murmurs begin. Government dog, someone hisses. A stool scrapes. A fight nearly starts. But the barkeep slams a mug on the counter and growls, "Take it outside." Beards or no, I clean up after both of you. You down your drink quickly and leave. In the street, snow begins to fall. Gentle, slow, like ash settling on a battlefield. You catch a flake on your palm and think of your father, his beard thick and peppered with gray smelling of cedar and tobacco. You wonder what he would say if he saw you now. Back home, you light a candle and stare into a mirror. The flickering flame warps your face, softens the angles. You look younger. Not in a good way. In a fragile way. You open the drawer where you hid the clippings from your last shave. It's ridiculous, you know, but still you saved them. A little bundle of hair tied with string. You hold it in your palm like a keepsake. Maybe someday they'll grow back. Maybe someday Russia will look back on all this and laugh. But tonight you just miss your beard. You sit hunched in the corner of a swaying carriage, staring at the worn leather of your boots as the ruts of the Polish road jar your bones. Your nose is stuffy, not from illness, but from a strange mix of pipe smoke, horse sweat, and a waft of foreign cologne from the man beside you, your Tsar. Not dressed as a czar, though. He wears a coarse wool coat, travel-worn breeches, and an odd cap pulled low to hide his unmistakably large forehead. He's trying to blend in, but let's be honest, Peter the Great stands out like a windmill in the Kremlin. You're part of something remarkable, the Grand Embassy, a sprawling diplomatic mission/road trip/midlife identity crisis that would redefine an empire. It's 1697, and Peter is traveling incognito through Europe. Not for sightseeing, not even for alliances, though those will come, but for something much stranger, a personal crash course in Western civilization. He's here to watch, study, absorb, and ultimately transform Russia. You trudge behind him through muddy shipyards in the Netherlands where Peter rolls up his sleeves and starts hammering planks like an overgrown apprentice. He's obsessed with ships. He kneels to study rudder spokes, cannons, measures mast angles. He works the docks like he was born to it. The Dutch workers chuckle at first until he outlasts them on his feet. Then they nod in approval. At night, he scribbles notes by candlelight, ship design. Wide bow iron nails better than oak pegs. Then underneath in a less tidy scrawl, no beards on sailors. Face is clear, must consider. Historians still debate whether Peter's obsession with Western Europe was strategic or personal. Was he modernizing Russia for military strength? Or did he simply envy the Polish, the coffee houses, the clean-shaven confidence of the West? Either way, what he saw confirmed what he already believed: Russia looked old. Too old. From Amsterdam, you cross to England. London greets you with soot fog and noisy markets. Peter loves it. He visits Greenwich Observatory, studies city sewage systems, yes, really, and marvels at how the English Navy seems to function like clockwork. You follow him into a barber's shop one gray morning. A bell chimes. The barber blinks, then bows. He doesn't know Peter's true identity, just that this tall, oddly intense man wants a shave. You stand by the door as the blade glides across Peter's jaw. No flinch, no hesitation. He studies himself afterward with a look you recognize: calculated approval. He strokes the now smooth skin, nods once, and leaves a generous tip. Later that evening at a tavern, Peter speaks quietly over his ale. When a man's face is bare, his thoughts are open. You see truth without fur. He laughs softly. Russia hides too much in its beards. You're not sure whether to agree or not, so you sip your drink and pretend to ponder. From there, it's Austria. Vienna is elegant, orderly, and visibly unimpressed by Russian entourage etiquette. Here, Peter studies military drills, architecture, and public sanitation systems. He notices again the clean faces, the crisp coats, the straight posture. He doesn't comment much, but you can see him thinking. One night in an inn near Prague, you overhear Peter talking to one of his aides. They cling to beards like they cling to superstition, he says. How can I lead a country into the future when half my boyars still believe thunder is caused by angry saints? The aide tries to respond, but Peter's already pacing. They'll fight me, he continues, over hair of all things. But hair is just the start. I'm not shaving their chins. I'm cutting away the past. That's when you realize this isn't about grooming. It's a philosophy war, and Peter's bringing it home in his saddlebag. By the time the Grand Embassy returns to Russia in 1698, Peter is tired, thinner, but buzzing with plans. He's collected blueprints, ship models, charts, paintings, and dozens of odd tools he can barely explain. But more than anything, he brings back a vision. He wants canals like Amsterdam, academies like Oxford, gardens like Versailles, streets like London, and citizens who walk, talk, and look like they belong in the year 1700, not 1500. You arrive back in Moscow, the old city simmering with tension. The boyars have waited, the priests have waited, the frost has waited, but Peter is already moving. The first sign is subtle foreign barbers suddenly appear on court grounds. The second is not an official decree that all men must adopt Western dress, and that includes losing the beard. You're standing in the reception hall when Peter makes his entrance clean-shaven, resplendent, in a foreign coat, boots polished, and eyes gleaming. The room freezes. He smiles wide. "Did you miss me?" Nobody answers. He lifts a hand. "Did you miss this?" He produces a long, curved razor. Somewhere in the back, a noble gasps. Peter laughs. "It's time, gentlemen. Russia is going to wake up." The scissors glint in the morning light. You blink, squinting, unsure if you're dreaming. But no, this is real. Very real. You, along with a crowd of nobles, merchants, and the unfortunate few who happen to be standing too close to the palace gates, are being herded like sheep into the grand reception hall of Peter's Moscow residence. And what greets you inside? A chair, a man in foreign dress, and the unmistakable sound of snipping. Peter is sitting cross-legged on a velvet-cushioned dais, looking both gleeful and slightly terrifying, like a mischievous giant who's just discovered an exciting new toy personal grooming enforcement. Around him, assistants with razors and shears flank trembling nobles. You watch one poor boyar protest his beard thick and lustrous like spun obsidian, until two guards hold him steady, and a barber slices through his pride one tuft at a time. Peter claps. "Much better. You've taken 10 years off, Fyodor." Fyodor does not look pleased. He clutches his jaw as if it's been broken. Another man quietly sobs as his mustache is trimmed into oblivion. You try to hide behind a tapestry. It doesn't work. Next, Peter bellows, and you are pushed forward. As you take a seat, you feel something both cold and oddly intimate against your chin. A foreign hand wielding a blade with too much enthusiasm. You consider protesting, but the man beside you tried that, and he now looks like a startled squirrel. There's no escape. And in that moment, awkward, scratchy, humiliating, you become part of the new Russia. What Peter is doing isn't just cosmetic. It's a revolution one swipe at a time. And while most revolutions begin with blood, this one starts with lather. Peter doesn't trust the old nobility. The boyars, those long-robed, long-bearded elites, have always clung to the past like moss to a stone. Their power comes from a lineage ritual, and the careful cultivation of being seen as sacred. Beards are part of that mystique. They lend authority, gravitas. You're less likely to argue with a man who looks like he wrestled theology and won. But Peter wants a meritocracy, a modern army, engineers, scientists, accountants. Bearded mysticism has no place in his vision of scientific, military-forward, coffee-drinking Russia. So he begins to chip away at their symbols of power. First, their faces. Cut off the beards, he says, and you cut off their past. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic genius or just Peter being Peter impatient, chaotic, impulsive. Was it a political masterstroke or an impulsive tantrum that stuck nobody really knows? But either way it worked. Sort of. By 1699, Peter issues a formal decree all men, with the exception of clergy and peasants, must shave. Or else. And if they wish to keep their beards, fine, but they must pay. You head to the nearest tax office with dread in your heart and beard hairs still tickling your collar. The tax collector barely looks up as you slide your coin across the table. In return, he hands you a beard token, a small copper medallion, stamped with a grim little beard, and the words, "The beard tax has been taken." You stare at it. That's it. That's your right to wear a beard. You're halfway out the door when a guard stops you and demands to see your token. You show it. He nods. You're free to go today. Later that week, you see a man tackled in the marketplace. He hadn't paid. They shave him on the spot with a crowd watching. Some laugh. Others look away. A few cheer. It's hard to know what's worse. Suddenly everyone is checking everyone else's face. You walk through the streets feeling eyes on you, not because you're important, but because your jawline has become a political statement. A smooth chin says, I'm loyal. I'm modern. I follow orders. A beard says, I remember the old ways. I resist. I disapprove. And so the city begins to divide visually, culturally, emotionally. You visit a tailor to have a Western-style coat made as per Peter's next decree. While you're being measured, the tailor leans close and whispers, I heard there's a town that still refuses to shave. They post lookouts and hide the razors. You raise your eyebrows. He shrugs. Fools, but brave ones. You nod and leave the smell of pressed wool lingering on your collar, your beard token heavy in your pocket. A month later, you find yourself at a state banquet, one of Peter's infamous all-ranks feasts. He's seated at the head table flanked by generals, foreign ambassadors, and that one Dutch shipbuilder who now inexplicably has a government position. You sit beside a young noble who keeps touching his face like it might grow back if he concentrates hard enough. The wine flows. Toasts are made. Then Peter stands. Let us raise a glass, he says to the clean-chinned men of Russia, the future of our empire. Everyone raises their goblets, except one man at the far end, a minor landowner from Yaroslavl. He hesitates. His beard is still intact. Peter notices. He does not smile. He signals to a guard, and within minutes the man is standing red-faced in front of the entire court, while a barber removes his beard in real time as though it were part of the entertainment. No one applauds, no one laughs, but no one protests either. You sip your wine and look at your reflection in the glass. You don't recognize yourself anymore. Maybe that's the point. The beard is gone. Your chin feels exposed like you've wandered into public wearing nothing but a pair of borrowed socks. Every breeze is a betrayal. The townspeople barely look at you, but you feel their judgment, especially from those still sporting thick, defiant facial manes. Their whiskers wave like banners of protest while yours lies on a barber's floor somewhere in St. Petersburg. You had a choice, of course. Peter made sure of that shave or pay. And not a symbolic copper either. A real tax collected with real zeal. Depending on your social rank, the cost of keeping your beard could be as much as a month's wages. That's assuming the tax collector even believed you were worthy of the privilege. So like many men caught in the net of Tsar Peter's westernizing reforms you shaved, you miss the weight of it. The scratch when you're thinking, the warmth in winter. You even miss the crumbs. Now when you pass a mirror, you pause. Who is that man with the soft, unfamiliar jaw? You run a hand along the smoothness and wince. A red rash is blooming along your neck. The court barber's blade was not forgiving. Neither is the soap made of pig fat and lye. Your mother doesn't recognize you. Your uncle refuses to speak to you. And the priest? Well, he looked down his nose and muttered something about damaging the image of divine masculinity. You know better than to argue. But it's not just about hair. It's about loyalty. Peter has made that clear again and again. Loyalty isn't something you whisper in court anymore. It's something you wear or don't wear. A clean-shaven face says you are with him. That you believe in ships and science and Dutch tailoring. That you are not like the backward-bearded fools of the past. You are a new man whether you like it or not. And Peter, he is watching. You remember the first time you saw him up close. Not in armor, not in a portrait, but in the flesh strolling through the winter palace gardens with muddy boots and a Dutch pipe clenched between his teeth. He looked more like a sailor than a sovereign tall broad with eyes that could bore holes in ice. He stopped in front of you. You froze. He pointed at your beard. You paid, he asked. You nodded. He reached forward and ran a hand across your chin. Slowly, like petting a horse. Then he laughed. Good man, he said, and walked away. You didn't breathe until he vanished into the fog. That night, you wrapped your beard token in silk and tucked it into the lining of your coat. It's not beautiful, just a small copper disc stamped with an image of a beard, and the phrase, the beard tax has been paid. But it's the only reason you're allowed to keep what dignity you have. Some men still refuse. In back alleys in distant provinces, they hide their beards like fugitives. They strap false chins over them when inspectors arrive. They build false drawers into their homes to stash shaving tools should someone come looking. There are rumors, quiet ones, that a few monks disguised themselves and snuck into the city to protest. Sat outside the palace with shaved patches and burnt icons. One was arrested, another disappeared. Historians still debate whether Peter's beard tax was purely political, or if it sprang from his deep and genuine discomfort with the mysticism of the old Russian Orthodox aesthetic. Long beards, flowing robes, candlelight, it all reminded him of a Russia he was desperate to bury. A Russia that didn't build ships. A Russia that thought maps were heresy. You've heard the sermons, you know the passages. A beard is the image of God's wisdom. One priest cried, shaking his gray mane like a banner. He was booed, mostly by men whose jaws were still sore from that morning's shave. You pass a tavern window and glimpse your reflection again. Still strange, still smooth. Inside the bearded drink in corners, muttering about foreign disease and unnatural men. One points to your face and spits. You keep walking. That night, in the privacy of your room, you light a candle and retrieve your old comb. Out of habit. There's nothing left to groom, of course. But you run it along your chin anyway, pretending. You recall what the Tsar said in one of his proclamations. It is more honorable to resemble a Western gentleman than a wilderness priest. You wonder if he truly believed that. Or if he just wanted control over every face in Russia. One of your cousins fled to the countryside rather than shave. He sends you letters carefully worded, always vague. Says he lives with other face freedom folk. They grow their beards out past their chests as thick as curtains. He included a drawing once. The ink was smudged by rain or maybe tears. You run your fingers along your jaw. A few rough hairs have returned. You let them be. You dream of Peter. In the dream, he holds scissors made of fire and a mirror made of ice. He smiles. You wake with your hand at your chin, just checking. Still there, still smooth, for now. You've taken an oath. Not the grand kind like knights do. There's no trumpet, no banner, no feast after. No, yours is quieter. Bound in sweat and salt and slippery promises made in candlelit corners. You are now officially a groom of the stool royal servant, noble-born and personal attendant to His Majesty's most private business. Yes, that business. It's not a metaphor. You literally help the king with what goes in and what comes out. The chamber pot awaits. You stand beside it with practiced patience, holding a cloth, scented faintly with lavender and resignation. This is not a job for the squeamish or the proud, or anyone hoping to keep their dignity intact through breakfast. And yet, here you are. Dressed finer than most merchants, wearing soft gloves and a silk sash that denotes your special status, and court a lord of waste management. The king shuffles in, yawning. A servant has already warmed the seat, aired the room, and lit a small stick of frankincense. The stool itself is made of polished oak, fitted with cushions and engraved with golden lions. There's even a footrest. You hold a pitcher of warm water. He nods. You help him lower himself. The room is silent but for the rustling of robes and the subtle sigh of a man settling into porcelain meditation. No one teaches you how to make small talk at this stage. You just wait. In public, your job is whispered about. At court, you're both mocked and envied. Mocked because, well, you clean up after the king, but envied because you're one of the few with direct daily access to his royal person. That makes you powerful, dangerous even. You've heard things on this side of the curtain about spies' alliances, secret debts. When a man is relaxed and relieved, he sometimes forgets that someone is standing 2 feet away holding a damp cloth and taking mental notes. Historians still argue whether grooms of the stool had genuine political influence, or whether their role was mostly ceremonial. The truth is probably both. You've been asked to convey messages on the king's behalf, to check the moods of certain nobles, to remind so-and-so that their taxes are due, all while folding towels and dabbing royal cheeks. You try not to think about it too much. Your official duties include maintaining the king's personal hygiene, arranging his bowel movements into a tolerable schedule, and ensuring that nothing unusual occurs in the daily process. You keep a log, literally and figuratively. One entry reads, "Second day after feast, slight strain. Increased prune compote suggested." You once handed that note to the royal physician. He read it with the same gravity as a battlefield report. There are fringe rumors that some kings believed the state of their stools predicted political fortune. If it floated, good omen, if not bad harvest. You haven't seen the king try that, but you've seen stranger superstitions upheld. Like the time he asked you to whisper, "Fortune flows freely" before every sitting for a week. You did it. Every time. No one questioned it. Because your job isn't just physical, it's spiritual support. You're the only person allowed in the room when the king is most vulnerable. That counts for something. Today's session ends uneventfully. You clean the stool, remove the linen cloth, and dispose of the contents in a discreet copper bucket. You carry it out of the room like it holds royal wine, nodding politely to the footmen who turn their heads as you pass. The waste goes to the garden pits, carefully composted and disguised under fragrant herbs. You once joked that the royal roses bloom especially red. No one laughed. Then someone else made the same joke, and the king laughed for 10 minutes. You smiled politely. Such is court life. You return to the chamber to refill the water basin, tidy the area, and refresh the incense. The stool gets polished weekly. The royal posterior is not to be offended by rough surfaces. You even once sewed a rip in the cushion yourself. The king never noticed. That's how you know you're doing the job right. At times you wonder how it came to this. You were born to a minor noble house, educated in Latin and swordplay. You dreamed of battle or books or perhaps a comfortable court post. Instead, you now measure your days and movements in moist towelettes. But you also dine better than most barons. You sleep in a private chamber near the royal apartments. And when the king hosts secret councils, you're often already in the room folding a towel or pretending to arrange soap. He trusts you. Because if you can be trusted with this, you can be trusted with anything. Still, you have to laugh sometimes. Like the morning you woke up and found yourself reciting bowel-related Latin poetry. Or the time a visiting duke asked if your sash came with a built-in pouch for perfume. You replied, "No, just vinegar." He didn't get the joke. You did. At the end of the day, you kneel beside the stool and light a final taper, letting the soft glow warm your face. It's quiet here. The bustle of court life feels far away. The gossip, the pressure, the absurd performances all muffled behind thick velvet curtains. This is your chapel, your altar, your throne. And while no one may ever sing songs of the man who bore the king's porcelain burdens, you know that history depends on invisible hinges. Unseen moments, gentle hands, even those that smell faintly of lavender in Enosline, and something else. The bell tolls once. Then again, you know that sound. It's not the church bell, not the hour mark, and certainly not a call to prayer. It's a summons in your stomach turns even before your feet begin moving. You are the plague barrier. There's no mistaking it. The rhythm of the bell is unmistakable, slow, deliberate, and final. When you hear it, you grab your pole, your cart, and the thick oiled cloth you tie over your mouth and nose. It doesn't help much, but it's better than nothing. You've grown used to the smell. Sort of. You step into the street. Fog hugs the cobblestones, and the city is silent in that peculiar way it gets when everyone's too scared to even cough out loud. Doors and shutters are closed, curtains drawn. You see no one, but you know they're watching. They always are. Your cart creaks as you push it, the wheels already crusted with yesterday's dust and darker things. You round a corner and spot the chalk mark on the door. A crude X scrawled in lime wash. That's the sign. You knock once more out of habit than expectation. No one ever answers. Still, you pause. 1 second, 2. Silence. You push the door open. The house is dim-shuttered from the inside. A chair is overturned. A loaf of bread sits half-eaten on the table, covered in flies. The air is heavy. You step inside, careful not to breathe through your nose. A thin string of light filters through a crack in the shutters and falls across the bed. There you find them. 2 bodies. A woman maybe 30, a child in her arms. You don't stop to look, not too closely. If you do, it gets harder. The work has to be mechanical. You say a quiet word under your breath, part prayer, part habit, and get to it. The pole helps. You never touch the bodies with your hands. You roll them gently into the sack, trying not to let the limbs bend wrong. There's something worse about how soft a dead body becomes, how it moves when it shouldn't. You've seen plague before. This strain is fast. Boils rise on the skin like angry fruit. Black patches bloom on the neck. The eyes dull in hours. Some say it's punishment. Others say it's rats. Most people don't say anything anymore. They just hide. Historians still argue about the cause. Was it really the fleas? Was it dirty water? Poor hygiene? Divine wrath? You've read none of the books and listened to all of the rumors. You don't need to know why the bodies pile up. Only that they do. By noon, your cart is full. Carefully arranged bodies wrapped in oiled cloth and sprinkled with lime. It helps slow the rot. Barely. You cover the top with another sheet damp with vinegar and begin the long walk to the plague pit. It lies outside the city wall just past the orchard that no one tends anymore. The pit is wide and deep, dug by criminals promised mercy they'll never actually get. Smoke rises in lazy ribbons from the edge. The fires don't stop. They can't stop. The risk of spread is too great. You back the cart toward the edge. A monk stands nearby muttering Latin, his eyes glassy. He stopped making the sign of the cross after the first 100. You tip the cart. The sacks tumble into the pit landing in soft thuds. Some burst open. You look away. There's no ceremony. No names. You record the address in your ledger, what's left of it. The ink bleeds through the page from last week's rain. You rinse your hands in a bucket of vinegar and ash. It burns, but you do it anyway. You rinse your boots, too. One of the others didn't. His toe turned black. Then his leg. Then... well, you buried him, too. When you return to the city, a child throws a stone at your cart. Murderer, he yells. You say nothing. The baker refuses to sell to you directly. The apothecary charges you double. Your neighbors don't speak your name anymore. You've started keeping to the shadows, cutting through back alleys, avoiding the market square. But when night comes and the bell tolls again, they still expect you to answer. And you do. Because someone has to. You once kept a count. 23 in one day. Then 31. Then you stopped counting. You stopped writing their names. You stopped looking at their faces. Because when you did, they started appearing in your dreams, standing at the edge of your bed. Mouths open, saying nothing. Just watching. You sleep less now. You eat little. But you keep going. Because someone must. You pass a group of priests burning incense in the square. They wave censers and chant, hoping to ward off the miasma. One swings his censer toward you. The smoke curls around your cloak, mingling with the layers of vinegar and death you wear like armor. He looks at you with pity. Or is it fear? You can't tell anymore. At the end of the day, you sit on a stone bench near the outer wall. It's cracked. Moss grows in the creases. The air is cool. The breeze carries the scent of apples from the abandoned orchard. You close your eyes and let yourself imagine a different sound. Not the bell, not the coughing, not the creak of the cart. But wind in the trees, laughter, life. Just for a moment. Then the bell tolls again. You stand and push the cart forward. The doorway is too small. Again. You stoop, scrape your shoulders on the lintel, and enter sideways into a dimly lit chamber that smells of onions, candle smoke, and stale sweat. Someone coughs. You hear rats in the wall. This is not a courtroom. This is a torture room, and you are its operator. You're titled the questioner. It sounds noble in documents, terrifying in practice. You don't wear black robes. You don't cackle. You don't mutter Latin threats or chant in the dark. You wear a plain leather apron and keep your tools in neat rows on a scarred wooden table. You are a government functionary, an interrogator, a civil servant of the most medieval kind. The prisoner is brought in eyes wide and darting. You've seen that look before. It's the moment they realize this is real. The stories were not exaggerated. The chains, the wheel, the iron boot, they exist. And now they're about to become very personal. You nod to the guards. They leave. It's just you now and him. You light a candle. Slowly. No rush. Fear works best when it simmers. You begin your ritual, not the torture, the talking. Because contrary to legend, you don't start with a rack. You start with questions. Always questions. That's why they call you the questioner. You ask calmly, even kindly. You offer water. You explain the rules. You're not a monster. Just a man with a job. You ask about names, affiliations, where the coins came from, who met with whom. The man swears he's innocent. They all do. You nod, take notes. Then you remove your gloves. The first tool you reach for is small, a wedge of wood used to separate fingers. Not painful, not yet. You show it to him. You see, you say, we're just talking. You wedge it between two knuckles. He winces. More names, more protestations. You nod again. Historians still argue whether torture in medieval courts was truly about extracting truth or enforcing control. Whether the confessions meant anything, or if they were simply a script the accused were forced to perform before the curtain dropped. You have your own theory. Sometimes they crack fast. Before you touch them. One look at the table, one whiff of iron and burnt hair, and they crumble. Others take time. One man sang lullabies to himself for hours. Another asked for his mother. Another began confessing before you said a word just to end the waiting. You keep a ledger. You log times tools use statements made. The bishop's men review your notes weekly. You never write your opinion. That's not your role. You record, you perform, you question. You do not judge. There's a man you remember lean tall with soot under his nails. A blacksmith accused of selling weapons to rebels. He was silent for days. You tried everything. Heat, pressure, even the boot. Nothing. In the end, he died in the cell. Never said a word. You think of him sometimes. Not with guilt, at least not the kind you recognize, but with curiosity. Who was he protecting? Or was he simply innocent? Does it matter? You've been told no. The room is never cleaned well. Blood settles into the grooves of the floor, darkening the wood in streaks. You mop, yes. You burn sage sometimes to cut the smell. But it lingers. The torch brackets on the wall, drip wax onto a stone slab you use as a bench. There are carvings on it, old ones. Before your time. Names, prayers, maybe just scratches made by desperate hands. You don't add your name. No one does. This room remembers everything without help. Outside, the bells of the abbey ring for vespers. You check the hourglass on your table. Time to pause. You offer the prisoner bread and water. You remove the wedge. He cries. You sigh. You sharpen a quill and write subject in a state of distress level 2. That's official language. There's no space in the report for I think he's innocent, but I'm not allowed to stop. At home, your wife thinks you work in legal enforcement. She doesn't ask questions. You keep your cloak in the back room, separate from your other clothes. You burn the gloves weekly. Your son once asked why your hands were always shaking. You said it was the cold. It wasn't. One day a messenger arrives with a sealed letter. Your presence is requested at a special inquiry. That's code. Something political. Nobles involved. Treason whispered in velvet halls. You prepare your tools, pack your notes, bring extra cloths. This is where things get dangerous. Because when nobles confess, things change. Records vanish. Testimonies are reworded. Sometimes you never see the prisoner again, not because they're dead, but because they've been moved. Or pardoned. Or quietly relocated to an estate in the countryside where they will definitely not write a memoir. You try not to think about those cases. Later that night, you walk past a chapel. Candles flicker behind stained glass. A hymn drifts out into the cold air. You pause. A boy inside sings softly, voice unbroken and pure. You remember a time before all this. Before tools and masks and whispered truths. But that's someone else's memory. You keep walking. Back toward the shadows. Back to the table. Back to the questions that never end. The moon is high and so are you. Though not in the way modern folks might mean. You're balancing on the roof of a cathedral hammer. In one hand, lead strip in the other, muttering curses into the night wind. Welcome to the world of the medieval roof tiler. Or more precisely, the cathedral lead worker. Your workday starts before the sun and ends well after it's gone. Not that it matters. Once you're 50 feet above the street with nothing but stone gargoyles and the occasional pigeon. For company time stretches weirdly. Like wax in the summer sun. Below you, people bustle through muddy markets. They haggle over cabbages, gossip about plagues, and whisper about saints. Up here, it's just you and the gargoyles. You swear one of them winks at you sometimes. Lead. It's your best friend and your worst enemy. Each day you melt it, shape it, stretch it into strips to fit between massive tile slate if you're lucky. Clay if you're cursed. You hammer it flat, fold the joints, and seal it against wind and rain. Your work keeps holy books dry and choirs warm. But the fumes? They're not kind. You've started losing words. Your fingers shake when you lift your morning spoon. Your apprentice jokes that you're cursed by the saints. You chuckle, but deep down you wonder. Historians still argue whether medieval roofers knew the dangers of working with lead or just ignored them. The term lead poisoning didn't exist yet, but the trembling sickness certainly did. You're beginning to understand why. Today's task is delicate. A spire repair. Some fool of a bell ringer got too enthusiastic last week and cracked one of the ridge beams. Now, you're up here 30 meters in the air trying to fix it with nothing but rope harnesses, splintering planks, and your own stubborn balance. Your hands are calloused, your knees ache, but the work, it's beautiful. You glance over your shoulder and there's the valley green golden in the low light. Curling smoke rising from cottages like brushstrokes. You see the river silver and slow, and if you squint just right, the whole world feels peaceful. Up here, no one calls you a peasant. No one cares that your boots are split. You're just a silhouette against the sky. And if you fall, well, there's a part of you that thinks that wouldn't be the worst way to go. Your apprentice Tom is shouting something from the ladder. Master, the mortar's cracked on the east flank. You grunt in reply. That boy shouts everything like it's urgent, even when it's just a loose pigeon feather. Still, he's right this time. The tiles are separating. You adjust your rope edge down the sloped roof and swing your legs around the gargoyle's perch. Its expression never changes, mouth agape, tongue out, eyes bulging. You name this one Albert. He's your favorite. As you work, you remember the day you took this job. Your father said, son, at least if you fall, it's quick. Your mother just wept into her apron. There are perks. You sleep well, too tired to do otherwise. You eat hearty bread cheese ale. Sometimes stew, sometimes just onions. And you hear things. Secrets. The cathedral absorbs them like stone lungs. You've overheard priests muttering prayers they shouldn't know. You've seen nuns whispering to traveling knights by moonlight. Once you even saw the bishop trip over his own robe in the cloister and mutter something. Decidedly unholy. You tell no one. Because up here, secrets are yours. One time a lord commissioned a tower with a golden rooster on top. Symbol of Christ, he said. Put it up there nice and tall. You did. The wind snapped it off in 3 days. The second time you made it lighter, it twisted in the breeze like a drunken dancer. The third time you just forged a simple iron one and painted it gold. He never noticed. Sometimes craftsmanship means knowing when to lie. Your hands ache. You adjust the leather strap on your wrist and finish soldering the final lead seam. The tile is set. The water will stay out. For now. You nod to Albert the gargoyle. Job done, mate. He doesn't reply. That night you descend by moonlight. Each rung of the ladder feels like a prayer. Your boots hit solid earth again and your legs tremble like they've forgotten gravity. Tom hands you a crust of bread and a flask. You eat in silence, backs against the cathedral wall, staring up at the silhouette you've just patched with your own 2 hands. A shooting star cuts across the sky. Tom says wish for something. You don't. You already have what you came for. The bell tower looms ahead, its shadow slanting across the muddy square like a sundial drawn by a drunk. You duck under a low stone arch, careful not to step in the puddle of something that might once have been stew, and make your way up the spiral stairs. Your knees already regret this, but the tower isn't going to ring itself. You are the town crier, which sounds noble until you realize you're essentially a medieval loudspeaker with sore feet and a questionable wardrobe. Your bell swings from your belt, dented from one too many angry goats, and at least one time you sat on it by mistake. Your scroll is tucked under your arm, freshly inked with royal decrees, tax increases, and the occasional wildly irrelevant proclamation about grain measurements or eel limits. You clear your throat. It echoes. Time to shout at strangers for a living. Oh yes, oh yes. That's the start. Always. It means hear you, though most people now hear it as please throw vegetables at me. You unfurl the scroll with a theatrical flourish that's more for your benefit than anyone else's. By order of His Majesty from this day forward, no man shall keep more than 3 pigs within city walls unless accompanied by a licensed pig wrangler. A pause. Someone mutters, I am the pig. You continue. And all ale shall henceforth be taxed at 1 1/2 pence per barrel. Now comes the groaning. A man spits in the dirt. A woman holding a basket of eggs narrows her eyes. You adjust your stance slightly, just enough to dodge any flying yolks. Historians still argue whether town criers were respected officials or glorified buffoons. Truth is, you're both. You speak with the king's authority, but also carry the bruises of every unpopular announcement. One week, you're declaring a harvest festival. The next, you're announcing a new manure disposal ordinance. Same bell, same scowl from the butcher's wife. You learn to read a crowd fast. And you've developed strategic sprinting skills. Your duties don't end with shouting. You also deliver messages, sometimes walk prisoners to court, and once had to describe a missing goose in dramatic detail. Gray feathers mean disposition answers to Hubert. You are in effect the town's voice. And it's complaint sponge. Children imitate you. Old women scold you. Men argue about your pronunciation of levy. You pronounce it levy. They say leve. You say the king doesn't care how I say it. He just wants his coin. That shuts them up, mostly. You walk through the marketplace ringing your bell at measured intervals. The sound has become part of the town's rhythm, like the baker's whistle or the forge's hammer. People turn their heads without thinking. Some even listen. Your favorite part? The dramatic pauses. Tomorrow's execution has been postponed due to rain, you announce in the square. Everyone groans. The executioner sighs. He'd already sharpened his blade. You nod solemnly and move on. There's a rhythm to your route. Northgate by sunrise market, by mid-morning chapel steps at noon, and the tavern alley in the late afternoon, usually your most hostile crowd. Today is no exception. More taxes, a drunk bellows, spilling half his mead down his shirt. More honor, you reply. He throws a cabbage. You duck with the agility of a man who's had too many cabbages thrown at him. Another day, another bruise. By evening, your voice is rough. You soothe it with a sip of cider and a licorice root. You chew like a nobleman smokes a pipe. The scroll is shorter now, mostly spent. You sit on the stone bench outside the apothecary and scan what's left. There's a love notice. From a man named Harold to a woman named Beatrice. You're supposed to read it aloud at dusk. You sigh. These are always awkward. You stand clear your throat and shout, "Oh yes, oh yes!" Harold, the cooper, declares his undying affection for Beatrice the laundress, who, quote, has eyes like ripened figs and a voice smoother than church butter. A ripple of laughter. Beatrice, who happens to be nearby, turns bright red. You offer a little bow. The townsfolk do enjoy a spectacle even when it's ridiculous. At night, you return home. It's small, 2 rooms, low ceiling, a leaky roof, but it smells like bread and lavender. And that's enough. You hang your bell by the hearth, roll up your scroll, and massage your jaw. Your voice will recover by morning. It always does. You stare into the fire and wonder what tomorrow's news will bring. More taxes, more plagues, another royal marriage with a name no one can pronounce. Whatever it is, you'll read it. You'll shout it. And maybe you'll dodge the cabbage. You crouch in the corner of a cramped stone chamber, clutching a damp sponge and wondering for the 3rd time this morning why your life smells like boiled cabbage and wax. Outside a bell tolls. Inside, the queen is sighing again. You are a royal bedchamber servant, more formally titled gentleman or woman of the bedchamber, though there is very little that's gentle about the work, especially not during royal childbirth, which unfortunately for you is happening right now. No one told you it would be this loud, or this sticky, or this smelly, but your job isn't to question. Your job is to fetch warm water, adjust pillows, and most importantly, keep the linen clean. The royal physician is pacing, the midwife is shouting, the queen is shrieking, you are trying not to faint. In court, you are considered a person of status. You wear velvet, you attend formal meals. You even once helped select the king's nightcap. But behind the scenes, you're mopping sweat off royal brows, organizing the queen's intimate linens, and trying not to drop the chamber pot during a curtsy. It's a strange job. One moment you're holding the sovereign's hand during a night terror. The next, you're quietly scrubbing out a wine stain from the royal bedsheets while pretending not to hear certain noises coming from behind the curtain. You've seen it all, literally. The human body, you've learned, has no secrets at court. Historians still argue whether bedchamber staff were simply glorified attendants or wielded real power behind the silken screens. The answer lies in your satchel, where a small velvet pouch contains a ring the queen once handed you in secret along with a message. Only deliver this if he changes his mind. She never said who he was. You've kept it hidden for 6 months. The childbirth is not going well. The baby is late. The midwife mutters about moon phases and narrow hips. The priest stands in the corner pretending to pray but clearly calculating royal inheritance laws. You step forward with another cloth. Cool her brow, the physician barks, and keep the incense burning. The smell is unfavorable. You resist the urge to point out that the incense is just masking the overwhelming scent of panic sweat and something vaguely metallic. You dab the queen's forehead. She grips your wrist with surprising strength. If it's a girl, she says through gritted teeth, burn my wedding dress. You don't ask questions. You just nod. Childbirth in a medieval court is less of a private moment and more of a public spectacle. Nobles are allowed to attend. Courtiers gather in nearby chambers, straining to catch each cry. You once saw the Duke of Aragon faint just from hearing the afterbirth hit the floor. There's a superstition that if the baby is born during a storm, it will grow to be a tyrant. It's cloudy now. Thunder rolls in the distance. You hope the baby hurries. Back in the linen room, you catch a breath and change into your 3rd tunic of the day. A rat skitters under a bench. You throw a boot at it. Miss. There's talk that some royal births have witnesses appointed by the king just to confirm the child is legitimate. You've seen one of those before, a scowling man in gold who refused to blink for 6 hours. You wonder if he even noticed when the nursemaid swapped the babies. No one talks about that now. The baby arrives just before dusk. It's a boy. Loud lungs, wrinkled face, sticky as a honeyed fig. The nursemaid wraps him in swaddling, the midwife weeps with relief, and the physician pretends it went exactly as planned. The queen passes out. You carry out the soiled linens and drop them into the boiling pot, where vinegar and rosewater are meant to purify them. They don't. You sit on the edge of a stone step, smelling of ash and steam and something vaguely meaty. The sun sets. Another heir is born. Later, at the celebration feast, you're invited to stand at the back of the hall in your formal tunic, holding a silver jug of spiced wine. No one thanks you. No one sees the bruises on your arms from carrying water buckets all night. But the queen catches your eye once, just for a second, and nods. It's enough! Your job is not to be remembered. Your job is to remember everything. Who entered the bedchamber at what hour? Which courtier left with red-rimmed eyes? What herbs were added to the queen's bath? You've become part of the royal body. Its heartbeat, its muscle memory, its best-kept secret. At night, you finally return to your cot. The mattress is thin, the blanket scratchy, and your feet ache like you've walked across the Alps. You light a single taper, turn it low, and listen. Far off in the nursery, the baby cries. Another servant soothes him. You close your eyes. Another day in the bedchamber awaits tomorrow, and the queen will want rose oil on her wrists. Again. It starts with a soft rattle in the walls, then scratching, then the unmistakable shriek of something that should not be inside the grain silo. You grab your gloves, your sack, and the heavy wooden paddle you've named Judith. Time to go to work. You are a rat catcher. A humble, much-needed, rarely appreciated guardian of granaries, bakeries, and royal kitchens. You are the last line of defense between civilization and chaos bred, and black-dropping sanity and tiny twitchy noses that chew through everything in sight. People say you're a little odd. You talk to your traps, you whistle to the corners, you hum dirges while waiting in silence for the squeak of a caught tail. But they still call you when the scratching starts, because they know the rats always come back. You've seen them in numbers so thick the floor moved. You once watched a grown knight scream when one ran across his shoe. He claimed it was a demonic weasel. You didn't correct him, you just laid your traps and waited. You don't kill with poison. That's for amateurs and people who like cleaning up bloated rat corpses behind their walls. No, you trap, drown, and burn. Quick, clean, final. Your mentor used to say, a rat in the stew is a meal ruined. A rat in the ledger is a kingdom lost. You didn't understand that as a child. Now you do. Tonight's infestation is in the apothecary cellar. Figures. They're always attracted to the dried herbs, the flour bags, the half-open jars of something sticky and vaguely alchemical. You set your candle on a brick and crouch low. The air smells of mint dust and something sour. You wait. You don't breathe. The trap snaps. You smile. One down. Historians still argue whether medieval towns had formal pest control, or if men like you were just tolerated freelancers. The truth lies in your payment, a hunk of cheese, 3 copper coins, and a promise of free beer if the ale stays rat-free all winter. That's not official salary, but it's better than being ignored. Your tools are simple. Spring traps made of wire and bone. Tar buckets for drowning. Smoke pellets for flushing rats from walls. A long-handled hook for lifting floorboards. A ledger for names, yes names. You name the colonies. You're currently working on the Stiltshire Creep, a particularly persistent nest that's claimed 3 bakeries, 1 stable, and a chicken coop. You suspect it's the same colony, just migrating like little hairy invaders. You've drawn a tiny map of their movement. The priest called it obsessive. You call it preventative cartography. You have one companion, a lean gray cat named Buttons. Don't let the name fool you. Buttons is a killer. She slinks beside you as you move from cellar to loft, pawing at doors, sniffing for entry holes, and once memorably dragging a rat twice her size out of the soup kitchen pantry. She's your best friend. You share your bed, your meals, your victories. You've made her a tiny collar from leather scraps. She wears it like royalty. There's a superstition in town: if a rat catcher looks you in the eye, before dawn you'll dream of teeth and drown in barley. You started that rumor. It keeps people from bothering you while you work. You don't mind being alone. Rats are easier company than nobles. They don't lie. They don't pretend. They either run or fight, and you're ready for both. Tonight's haul is 6 rats. 2 drowned, 3 caged, 1 escaped with part of your trap still clamped to its leg. You'll get him tomorrow. You always do. You burn the bodies in a clay pit lined with lime and rosemary. No ceremony, just smoke and the crackle of tiny bones. Buttons watches from a fence post, tail twitching. You tip your hat to the fire. The town rarely says thank you. But when the bread stops disappearing, when the grain doesn't smell like urine, when the baker can finally sleep without hearing skittering above his head, you know they're grateful. They show it in other ways. An extra crust wrapped in linen, a nod from the barmaid, a silent heavy purse left on your doorstep. It's enough. You return home. A one-room cottage on the edge of town built into the hillside smelling faintly of vinegar and soot. You light your lantern. Buttons curls up beside the hearth. You check your traps one more time. All clear. Then you set down your paddle, hang up your gloves, and scratch a mark in the doorframe. Another night survived. Another nest silenced. Tomorrow, the Abbey. You hear the monks have mice. Amateurs. You're ankle-deep in mud, knee-deep in animal guts, and fully submerged in existential questions about your life choices. Welcome to your glamorous medieval career as a full-time tanner. A job so pungent, even other medieval workers wince when you pass. Your official title is something like Master of Hides, but everyone just calls you that guy who always smells like death. And they're not wrong, you do. Even you can't smell anything else anymore. You once lost a bet trying to guess if a barrel contained sheep urine or cow urine, and realized you were holding your lunch the whole time. You spend your days turning raw animal skins into usable leather, which sounds simple. It is not. It's chemistry. It's labor. It's very, very gross. First, the skins arrive fresh from the butcher, still sticky, occasionally warm. You do not flinch. You're long past that. You just sigh, tie your apron tighter, and start scraping. The dehairing process is step one. You soak the hides in vats of urine or fermented lime water. Some tanners use bird droppings. Some use human waste. You prefer a mix called tanner's tea. It's awful. It works. After a few days, the hair loosens. You scrape it off with a curved blade called a fleshing knife, pushing the gunk into wooden gutters that run downhill toward the river. You're legally supposed to use a runoff barrel. You definitely don't. Once the flesh is gone, it's time for the real magic tanning. Historians still argue whether vegetable tanning or brain tanning was more common in certain regions, but in your village you use oak bark soaked in water. The tannins seep into the skin fibers over weeks, strengthening and preserving them. It smells earthy, tangy, still awful. Some older tanners swear by brain tanning literally mashing up the animal's own brain and rubbing it into the hide. Every animal has enough brain to tan its own skin, your uncle used to say. He also used to eat pickled hooves for breakfast, so you stick with bark. The hides change over time. At first they're floppy, pale, gross. Then tougher. Richer. You stretch them on frames to dry, smoothing out wrinkles with a pumice stone, or just your thumbs if you're feeling stubborn. After days of sun and air, you get leather, and a sunburn, and about 3 new blisters, and the satisfaction of knowing that someone somewhere will wear shoes that once sat in your backyard covered in maggots. You're kind of a hero, really. Your neighbors hate your workshop. They complain about the smell. They avoid the street. Children throw pebbles at your door. The butcher once left a note that just said, "For the love of God, invest in lids." You ignore them, until they need new boots. Then they come around real polite-like, asking for supple soles or strong belts. You always charge double if they've insulted you within the last week. You keep a list. It's called the Spite Ledger. You're not ashamed. Your apprentice is named Wren. She's young, nose constantly wrinkled, but she's quick. You like that. She's the first one in 5 years who didn't vomit during her first soak and scrape session. She also brings you roasted chestnuts sometimes. You're considering teaching her the hidden formula, the one with honey and ash that makes leather water resistant and oddly slightly lavender scented. It was your grandmother's recipe. She tanned leather for the army and allegedly once smuggled secret maps inside a saddle flap. You like to think you inherited that rebellious streak. You once tanned a bear hide. A gift from a nobleman who wanted a rug fierce enough to scare my guess. The skin took weeks. It stank up the entire street. You nearly lost your sense of balance from the ammonia fumes. But when it was done, magnificent. You lined the eyes with polished black stone, brushed the fur to a shine. The nobleman screamed when he saw it, in delight. Probably. He paid you in gold. You bought a new roof. Best trade of your life. There's talk that the monastery up north is importing Italian leather. Smooth, dark, flawless. But you've seen it. Too thin. Too soft. You mutter wouldn't last a week in real boots every time someone brings it up. You take pride in your leather. It bends, not breaks. It's rough like you, but loyal. Like your old dog, Bristle. He used to sleep under the drying rack and bark every time someone walked too close to the hides. You buried him in a saddlecloth you couldn't bring yourself to sell. You still talk to him sometimes. At the end of the day, your hands are black. At the nails, your clothes soaked through and your hair smells like vinegar and death. But your racks are full, your buckets are labeled, and your next orders are already pinned to the beam above the door. You clean your tools, you wash badly, and you fall into bed too tired to notice that even your dreams smell faintly of rot and bark. Another day, another dozen hides closer to greatness. Or at least boots. Your cloak is heavy. Your boots are cracked. Your lantern swings with every step, casting long, uncertain shadows on the damp alley walls. It's well past midnight, and the city has fallen mostly quiet except for the groaning. And the coughing. And the occasional distant scream. You're a plague barrier, one of the loneliest and least envied jobs in the medieval world. You walk when no one else dares to. You touch what no one else will. You carry the dead. They call you Death's Servant behind your back. You preferred just doing my job. You didn't ask for this, but after your cousin fell ill and your father and your neighbor, you took the shovel. Someone had to. You have a cart. A wooden thing with iron wheels that squeak like it's screaming. It rattles as you push it down the cobbled lanes, announcing your arrival to those huddled behind shutters in prayer. Some throw scraps of bread for payment. Some just sob. Others leave notes tied to their doorknobs, 2 bodies in the cellar. God help us. You whisper the same thing every time you read one. I'll try. Tonight's round starts near the tannery. It always smells awful, so you barely notice the sickness anymore. You pull your scarf tighter around your face, though you know it won't help. Nothing helps. Your first stop is a small cottage. The door creaks open. No one inside stirs. You know the drill. The bodies are already wrapped in linen, stacked carefully by the hearth. A child, a mother, someone's elderly uncle. You lift each with care as if they might still feel something. The linen shifts with every bump of the cart. You don't look too closely. You learned early on not to remember their faces. Historians still argue whether plague barriers were volunteers, criminals spared execution, or just paid men with no other prospects. You're not sure what you are anymore. You were a cobbler once. You made shoes for laughing brides and dancing children. Now you bury them. On your rounds, you pass landmarks you used to love. The bakery that sold honey twists, empty now. The tavern with the crooked sign, boarded up. The square where music once played, silent as bone. You still hum sometimes. Quiet little tunes under your breath. Half to scare the rats off, half to keep your own mind tethered. Once you heard a girl's voice singing from inside a shuttered house. Sweet trembling. You paused outside, pressed a coin to the doorframe, and moved on. You never heard her again. Your cart is full by moonrise. You head for the common pit beyond the northern wall. It's been dug and redone a dozen times. Deep wide lined with lime and ash. The ground around it is soft and slick, and the smell lives in your nose now, like a ghost that refuses to leave. You unload the bodies gently like packages wrapped in grief. You say a few words, always the same. May your road be swift and the wind at your back. Then you cover them, first with soil, then with lime, then more soil. The cart creaks empty as you walk away. You see things out here, figures moving where they shouldn't be, eyes watching from behind broken fences. Once you swear you saw a nun in white kneeling by the pit, hands clasped, mouth moving in prayer. But when you blinked, she was gone. Buttons the rat catcher's cat sometimes follows you. You let her. You like the company. You don't sleep much. But when you do, you dream of crowds. Not crowds fleeing, but crowds living. A wedding feast, a spring festival, boys splashing in a fountain. You wake up sweating, confused, lonely. The city in your dream had color. You haven't seen that in weeks. Still, you go out the next night. And the next! You light your lantern, lift your shovel, straighten your spine, and step into the alley again. You tell yourself this is temporary, that the bell will stop tolling, that someone will write your name down in a book not as a monster or a shadow, but as someone who helped, who showed up. Even when the world didn't want to. You sit on a stone bench as the sun begins to rise, orange light brushing against the frost-tipped grass, the cold seeping through your boots. Your breath fogs the air. Another day waits. But for a moment, you're allowed stillness. Your hands are cracked. Your tunic smells faintly of oil sweat and fire. You're a gong farmer, and if you think that name sounds noble, allow me to politely remind you it means you clean out medieval cesspits. Toilets, latrines, privies, filth. You don't shovel dreams, you shovel poo. At night, in silence, and often waist deep. The work begins after dark because no one wants to see you, or smell you. You bring a lantern, a bucket, a rope, and an iron hook. You wear leather boots and an old smock, your only armor against the contents of the castles or city's cesspits. Some are narrow shafts behind inns. Others are massive brick-lined basins beneath manors brimming with decades of buildup. Sometimes the waste is solid, sometimes not. Sometimes it bubbles. You don't ask why. Your hook clangs against the stone rim of a pit. You lower the bucket slowly. You already know this one is bad. Last week the barmaid fainted just walking past it. Your job: scoop out everything, haul it away, dump it outside the city walls in what's affectionately called the night soil meadow. You know the trail there by heart. So do your shoes. People don't speak to you unless they have to. They hold their breath when you walk by. Children laugh, but their parents whisper, "Don't mock the gong farmer, he knows where the stink goes." That's true, you do. You know every alley, every drain, every pipe that leaks a little too early in spring. You know where the waste pools, where it seeps, where it rises. You once found a ring in a cesspit. Solid gold, family crest. You returned it. The Baron gave you a nod. That's the most respect you've received in 5 years. Historians still argue whether gong farmers were criminally underpaid or just desperate enough not to care. Truth is, you do care. But caring doesn't pay rent. You took the job because your brother fell ill and the baker wouldn't hire a crippled apprentice. And now, well, you've learned to live with it. Literally. There's a technique to the work. You line your buckets in straw. You don't breathe through your nose. You avoid eating for 3 hours before each shift. The worst mistake is forgetting your gloves. The second worst is tripping in the dark, which you've done twice. You never wore that pair of boots again. Tonight you're working near the magistrate's hall. They've been dumping waste behind a locked gate. You have the key. That gives you oddly a strange sense of power. In the moonlight, the waste pit glows faintly green. You mutter beautiful. Then you begin. Scoop, lift, pour. Again and again. Your arms ache. Your spine creaks. Your shoulders feel like they're being wrung dry. But you don't stop. Because someone has to clear this out before the rains come. Or the smell will creep into the church. Again. There are stories that plague began with poor sanitation. You know better. Plague doesn't begin with you. It begins with neglect. With arrogance. With fancy boots stepping over puddles and pretending not to see the rot underneath. You keep things moving. You keep things clean. You're not the problem. You're the reason this whole mess hasn't exploded. Yet, dawn is rising now. Your cart is full. Your boots are heavier than your conscience. You walk slowly not from shame, but from exhaustion. At the edge of the city, you dump the contents into a shallow trench. You cover it with ash and soil, lime if you're lucky. The air finally starts to feel crisp again. You wipe your hands, you stare at the horizon, and you smile. Because tomorrow someone's going to sit on a wooden bench, breathe deep, and not gag. And they'll never know your name. But they'll be grateful. Silently, invisibly. And now, the morning light grows soft, curling through the mist like a ribbon. The world seems quieter now, slower. As if it's been listening to your footsteps, your labor, your unseen contribution to the great machine of medieval life. The breeze carries a scent not of smoke or filth, but something gentler, fresh earth, cold stone, a leaf about to fall. You walk a little slower. Your shoulders settle. Your eyes blink heavier. Even the birds don't rush their songs. Let them sleep in too. The tools are set down. The last bucket is emptied. Your hands, though worn and stained, are steady. The job, however strange, is done. And now the city yawns awake, unaware of the night's effort. You step back from the edge of the trench. You turn toward home. One foot, then another. Leather creaking softly. Heart beating slow. And with each step, the world softens. The noises fade. The cold air kisses your cheek, and you let your eyes close just a moment longer each time you blink. And maybe the silence will carry you to sleep. And you'll dream not of rats or carts or darkened pits, but of quiet fields, of faraway bells, of clean water running over smooth stones, of peace and rest. and the soft whisper of a story well told.